So in the Final Destination franchise, we get a lot of crazy death scenes. I mean, the tanning bed, gymnastics death, I mean, the lawnmower death as well. There are so many crazy ones, but at the same time, we also get some deaths that are kind of mediocre as well. So which deaths do I think are the best in the Final Destination franchise? Well, let's talk about it. All right, so the categories for this tier list are going to be right up at the top, Traumatized a Generation. Up next is You Don't Even Wanna Fuck With That Mac Daddy, the famous line from Tony Todd, rest in peace, from Final Destination 1. The next one is A Decent Dismount. Up next is Fake Tan, and after that at the bottom is going to be Death Took the Day Off. So first of all, guys, let me know down in the comments down below what your favorite deaths in the Final Destination franchise are. Also, leave a like on this video if you do enjoy it. It really does help this video out a lot. And just a heads up as well, I'm not going through any of the deaths that happen in the premonitions in this movie. I'm considering that a different thing. I'll have a different ranking on the premonitions as well. These are just going to be mainly deaths that happen outside of the premonitions. There is, I believe, one that's sort of related to the premonition, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But, you know, sue me if it's on the list as well. But you will see the premonitions mixed in here on the bottom. I didn't make this thing at the bottom, so just ignore that. We'll skip over that, like when it says Flight 180. But just a heads up on that. So, of course, the first death in the Final Destination franchise, a crazy one, a traumatizing one of the most sinister deaths, I think, in this entire franchise, but also one of those deaths that is without question one of the least gory deaths in this entire franchise as well, which is Todd's death in the original Final Destination. That first little holy shit, death is coming indication, that first hint in the franchise, which of course is water, happens right there dripping from the old toilet in Todd's bathroom. But to me, just what a great death scene. Like I said, very subtle in a lot of ways, but I mean, he's choking here. It feels so tense. And this is the first movie in the franchise, so we don't know yet if he's going to be able to get out of this situation, because we're all new to this. We don't know what's happening here. Really, his dad is just steps away. He doesn't know what's going on. And then on top of that, we see death in this scene covering up its own tracks as the water and the evidence kind of seeps back in. So obviously it's going to make it look like Todd did this to himself, but his eyes glaze over red. One of the most tense death scenes in this franchise, in my opinion. Great fake outs, just a hell of a lot of fun and really sinister. And honestly, Todd's death, the first one of the franchise, for me, I'm going to put it up in Traumatized a Generation. Now, some of these that go in these categories are going to be higher or lower within each category. Maybe I'll jumble them that way. We'll see how this thing goes. But yeah, Todd's, I got to put it in Traumatized a Generation. Just makes you think about, man, you're not safe even if you're in your bathroom just getting ready for bed. Something crazy could happen. And it's just a sinister, crazy ass death scene. So next one up, though, is going to be Terry. Obviously, this is going to be from Final Destination 1. We're just going to go all the way up to Bloodlines. So Terry's death. I mean, what a crazy death scene. It gives us a little indication on some of the gore and some of just the shocking moments we're going to see later on in the franchise, because, of course, Final Destination 1, the least gory, the least crazy with the death scenes in this entire franchise. It's almost more of like a thriller. Of course, this movie was originally written for the X-Files, but yeah, kind of more of a sci-fi thriller with some deaths. But Terry's is one of those where when it happens and she's giving that line to Carter as she's walking back into the street, I'm sure for some of you probably saw that something was coming, but it is a holy shit moment. It's one of those moments in a movie theater setting where after kind of the music and the sound effects tone down, people in the theater are going to look at each other like, holy shit, did you just see that? That was crazy. Just a wild moment in the movie. I'm sure made a lot of us question crossing the street, especially if you see a bus coming, or makes you just think about that. And then the reactions from everybody else as the blood and everything splatters onto them. Just a crazy, shocking jump scare, and one of the most memorable deaths, I feel like, in this franchise. And for me, I've got to put Terry's in also Traumatized a Generation, because such an effective yet kind of subtle, just a shocking moment. Yeah, makes you think about buses right away. So up next, we got to talk about the teacher. We got to talk about Valerie, that whole scene where she's in her house. She's just making tea, and then eventually she's like, you know what? Fuck the tea. This has been a rough week. Let's pour in some vodka. And then the cup breaks, and then you can see the vodka kind of dripping on the floor. So you're like, okay, that's probably not good. And then it drips onto the computer, and then the computer explodes and a shard of glass shoots into her throat. She's dying here, choking for breath. It's bloody. Things are happening all over the place. Alex then shows up because he gets a hint, because the little fire that guy's starting in the neighborhood, burning some brush or whatever, runs over there. The house is kind of starting on fire. Everything is going down. She grabs the rag, and then the knives fall into her. So it's playing on the whole, even when you're in your kitchen, all the stuff in your kitchen could potentially kill you, which we get a line about that in Final Destination Bloodlines as well, which is kind of fun. But yeah, Valerie's death, definitely a fun one. It's not the most memorable. I do like the big kind of epic explosion as Alex is leaving the house, and Sean William Scott's character is driving his bike around town like he does in this movie. It's basically Crazy Ralph in this movie, also sees that explosion. But yeah, it's pretty intense. Got some good fake outs and stuff like that. And then the chair falls down and basically puts the nail in the coffin, with the knife, pushing the knife further into Valerie. So yeah, for me, I've got to put Valerie's. It's solid, but it's not, one of the greatest in the franchise. But I do think it gets the job done. And it's definitely one of those moments in, the first movie that feels just very tense, because I just feel like they do such a great job in that movie of making these small, subtle deaths tense and fun. So Valerie's is going to go in, you don't even want to fuck with that Mac Daddy, because yeah, you do not. So up next is going to be Billy's. And I know a lot of people love Billy's death. So he gets his head basically chopped in half because of like a piece of metal that's under the train right after Alex saves Carter on the train, which adds to that whole moment. It's pretty tense. You're like, oh, they're going to get out of this? And then it kind of looks like they don't get out of it, but then they do. But yeah, I mean, you could see it coming from a mile away. It's still effective. It makes me think about this. Let's just say I'm next to a train, even if I'm just sort of remotely close to a train. Kind of makes me think a little bit about like, oh, damn, I hope there's not a piece of metal underneath that train or something. So that angle of it adds a little something extra to this death. But it's, it's not one of the greatest ones in the franchise or like that. But I think it's effective nonetheless. So Billy's is going to go in the same category. You don't even want to fuck with this Mac Daddy. But so yeah, on to the last death in the original Final Destination, and definitely an underwhelming death at the very end of the movie. Not to say that it's necessarily really bad, but the death is entirely off screen. You just see the sign, slide into Carter, and then it cuts to black. So not a memorable kill by any means. So I mean, I feel like it's got to be one of those where, death took the day off just because you literally don't even see the kill. So technically kind of death did take the day off. So, and then after that, of course, what was the fate of Alex? What was going to happen? Was Devon Sawa going to return in the second movie? No, he wasn't, and never returned in the franchise until Final Destination 5 when we get that little flashback, which I also don't even think Devon Sawa knew about. Fun fact, I believe they invited Devon Sawa to the red carpet for Final Destination 5, and he was like, sure, I'll come, I guess. And then he, come to find out, is literally in the movie, because of the flashback, like I said. But yeah, so Alex's death, we just find out in that news article that the cop in Final Destination 2 is reading that he died because of a falling brick accident. I think Clear also witnessed the whole thing. Don't even get to see it. Easily one of the best characters in this entire franchise, killed off just to kind of cut him out of the writing for future movies for whatever reason. Definitely sucks. Would have loved to see Devon Sawa return to the franchise, but yeah, I mean, obviously, this death needs to go in. Death took the day off because we just don't see it. All right, and up next is our favorite actor from the third I Know What You Did Last Summer movie as well. Good old Evan, right? The guy who won the lottery and then ended up in the car pile-up. Premonition, unfortunately for this dude. There's some good anxiety in this scene. Also plays off of the kitchen thing, like the death in the first Final Destination. He's getting his hand caught in the disposal. Who doesn't think about stuff like this when you're having to go into the disposal to get some chunky shit out of there? But it's got some decent fake outs. It's kind of, the kitchen is catching on fire. There's some anxiety with that. And I like the fake out with the ladder at the very end of it. Like the ladder starts to fall and then just stops and he exhales. And then in typical Final Destination franchise, boom, right into the eye. Not a bad death, but definitely not one of the best in the franchise by any means, in my opinion. So I would put Evans in a decent dismount for me. Good old Tim, that little shit, definitely reminds me of the kid that we see in Final Destination Bloodlines as well, but one of those kids where, he's kind of a kid. I don't know exactly how old he is, but he's definitely a little shit in the movie, and you're like, you're probably going to get it, man, just because you're acting that way. And Tim's death, it plays on the whole, like being at the dentist thing, feels very much like we're at the dentist with him. They're grinding his teeth. Hate that. I mean, that's like nails on a chalkboard for all of us, I'm sure. So they pull it off, and I think they filmed that really well. He's choking on that thing that falls above him and falls into his mouth. That's pretty intense. The other people are trying to take care of the pigeon that keeps breaking the window on them, and at the same time, he's just suffocating to death, and then gets out of all of it. But, the good old pigeons come back, and this kid just gets brutally crushed. A very memorable death in this franchise, but honestly, to me, yes, it's great, and he just folds like an absolute accordion, but I really don't think it's one of the best in the franchise. It's not one that really traumatizes me because it's just this glass thing. It's not all that relatable. How often is glass being pulled above me by a crane? Well, actually never, but still a very memorable death nonetheless. So Tim's is going to go in the old Mac Daddy category because Death was not messing around with that kill. Death was pissed and wanted to give Tim a good one, which he does. Now you got to move on next to Tim's mama, Nora Carpenter. Maybe, inspired by John Carpenter, the legend, but who knows? But good old Nora. I mean, this death actually, it kind of reminds me of The Fugitive every single time I see it. The one-armed man, it was the one-armed man. But we've got this creepy guy in the elevator with all these prosthetic hooks and stuff. The cokehead guy kind of sees the vision of it, and then everybody is like, oh yeah, I think you're right. But I think this death is pretty intense. It's pretty fun as well. Everybody's kind of rushing to try to save her. She panics. So it's one of those moments where you're like screaming at the screen, like, keep your cool. Like, what are you doing? You could easily survive this if you just took a second to just breathe. I get it. Your kid was just brutally crushed in front of you, but still just a second so you can survive. Everybody's kind of trying to help her. You got two people in the elevator trying to help her, two people outside of the elevator trying to help her and get through the whole thing. So their hands are just on her right as her head gets decapitated in the elevator. I think a pretty memorable death in this franchise, to me, pretty intense, and I think it's pulled off pretty well. So Nora's, for me, is going to go in Mac Daddy. Also, joining Tim up there in Mac Daddy, I think it's an effective one. Oh, and by the way, that creepy fuck, whatever happened? Did the cops get her head? Did they find her head, or did that creepy guy take her head home? I don't know. Just a thought. All right, moving right along to Kat's death. This one to me always makes me laugh. This one's pretty hilarious. How the guy is, trying to fix something with her car, get her out of the car because she's stuck. And she's like, hey, be careful. And he's like, don't worry, I'm a professional, or whatever he says. And then throws the saw into the car. Boom, the airbag punches her head back into the PVC pipe that's sticking out of her seat and goes right through her head. And you're like, holy shit, that is kind of crazy, which then, of course, leads us into the next death. But where's Kat's going to go? It's a quick one. It does make me laugh. It's not one of the craziest set pieces in the franchise by any means. It's not one of the craziest deaths. It's also not one of the most memorable deaths in the franchise for me. So I need to put Kat's in. It's a decent dismount. Like I said, hers does lead into the cokehead Rory and his death because she dies and then the cigarette that she's smoking falls, goes into the pipe, catches that on fire, leads to the news van, which then explodes, blows up this barbed wire fence, and then the cokehead guy is just standing there and gets sliced like a little science fair art project, and his body parts just fall over the place. It's very similar to Cats. I always laugh. I think most people probably get a pretty good chuckle out of this one, and everybody in the scene sees it. It's got an audience, and everybody's just like, wow, that was crazy. And it's a pretty crazy death, but not one of the greatest in the franchise by any means. For me, Rory's is also going to go in decent dismount. It's solid, but it's not amazing. It doesn't even belong in Mac Daddy, in my opinion. But all right, up next is our good buddy Eugene, who almost turns into the guy in Final Destination 5 and is like, fuck this, I'm going to start killing people. I'm just going crazy, or am I off myself or something. So he's kind of losing it, but this one is a pretty intense scene. He's in the hospital and it feels very much like, it reminds me of those dreams you have when something bad is happening, a car's coming for you, a train's coming for you, whatever it is. But for some reason you either can't move or you just move really slow. Just that feeling of losing control, which is definitely a theme, which we do see in Final Destination 3. Definitely a theme in that movie, but his not great. I mean, he just basically gets caught in that big explosion in the hospital and burns up. But I think all the stuff leading up to his death, the fake outs and the intensity of that scene, I think is pretty solid. So for me, though, I'm going to put Eugene's into a decent dismount. Yep, I think that's the spot for it. Also, Clear, though, is a different story. So Clear, one of the best characters in this franchise, very important character in this franchise, one of the only characters to continue throughout multiple movies in this franchise, and then just gets, just explodes, gets burnt to death in the hospital really quickly. It's not the worst scene in the world. I like that it shows that the movie has stakes. I like the fact that it's kind of shocking. It happens suddenly. There's not like a lot of like build up and fake outs and stuff. Occasionally I do think it's important when they trickle in some of those just pure shocking death scenes, like the girl in the first movie getting hit by the bus. I think it's effective. And Clear's is a little bit shocking, but it's not great by any means, especially for an important character in the franchise. So for me, Clear's is going to go into fake tan. All right, now we got to talk about Brian, the final death in that movie. One of those moments that will probably make you absolutely laugh your ass off, sends off the movie in a classic Final Destination way. They're at the barbecue, and then all of a sudden, this Brian kid, who is basically a nothing burger character in this franchise, in this movie, just fires up the old grill and absolutely explodes. And his mom is screaming, his arm falls onto her plate. Classic Final Destination. Brian's is fun. It's basically nothing, but I think it's a decent dismount though, even though it's just such a small moment. So there you go, Brian. Decent dismount, man. Good job, dude. But man, all right, now it is of course time to talk about Ashley and Ashlyn. So back in this era, I was a teenager during this era, and there was a tanning salon like virtually on every corner. Probably more or as many tanning salons as Starbucks, if you can imagine that. It was just massive. So this scene, these girls dying in these tanning beds, made so much sense for this era. So for me and my age, this death scene really works. This is brutal. I've never been tanning in my entire life, but I imagine if you have, you've seen this movie, you probably think about this from time to time. Maybe check that thermostat, maybe check to see what's around you, hoping there's not a big gulp nearby or something like that, but they get absolutely burnt to a crisp, like pieces of bacon, which, funny enough, you know which movie did this scene before this movie? Was the third urban legend movie, it's called Bloody Mary or something like that. A wild movie that is not good at all, but had a tanning bed kill. Kind of similar to this, not to this level. Yeah, this is a classic one. Ashley and Ashlyn, you died. Love that transition between, their tanning beds to the caskets. That's a great one. That's very iconic. But you guys, you have to go up there under Traumatized a Generation, despite the fact that yo ass was getting a fake tan. You got to go up there because it definitely is one of the most memorable death scenes in this entire franchise. All right, so next up is going to be Frankie Cheeks, and this whole thing plays off of the whole drive-through. I'm sure most of us or all of us have probably been through a drive-through at some point in our life, but it's got some decent little fake outs going on. Who knows why the hell those people didn't move sooner that were behind our main characters, but the main reason why I'm going to put this kill in the category that it's going to go in is just because, man, it is crazy, crunchy, bloody, super gory. Pieces of his skull are flying all over our main characters, and it is just a crazy ass kill as the car crushes into the other car and then sends the engine, motor, whatever you want to say, into the back of this guy's skull and just absolutely grinds it up. It's a very memorable death for me. Not as memorable, not as iconic as maybe Ashley and Ashlyn's or Taz or stuff like that. But honestly, I do feel like Frankie's belongs in Traumatized a Generation. I kind of the back half of that, I did kind of think about putting it in, you don't even want to fuck with that Mac Daddy, but to me, I do think it makes me think about it when I go through drive-thrus now. But yeah, not as good as Ashley and Ashland's, like I said. So kind of on the back half of that top tier for me, but a solid death nonetheless. So coming up next is going to be Lewis, the jock in the movie, the big football player. And to me, I think setting this death in a gym was just a brilliant idea. It makes a total sense, obviously, for this character, but such a great place for a death like this. I mean, there's so many loud sounds and heavy things and machines clanking all over the place. There's all of that. There's the loud music going on and just so much anxiety and so much testosterone in this whole setting and all of that. And yeah, some great fake outs as well. I love that they have actual sharp swords hanging in that thing above the weight room. It's not even in a frame. It's not even protected, really. Love that. But that's a fun little fake out. And then Wendy screams at him to get out of the way because she's starting to notice some of the signs. And then for a moment, you're like, oh, okay, maybe he's okay. And then he's just like, yeah, that's right, baby. All I do is just win. I just win. And then wham, his head gets absolutely crushed. And then kind of similar to the drive-through kill, I mean, it just seems like little pieces of his bloody skull are flying all over our main characters with the sound effects and all of that. It's a crazy one. And a very, very memorable death scene. Sometimes when I go to the gym, I think about that. And the gym, just in general, the weight room, whatever you want to call it, I mean, it's a dangerous place without question. I've had something fall onto my head, which I always think about, which hurt like hell. And this death definitely plays off of the gym and all of that stuff, I think, very, very well. So yeah, for me personally, I think Lewis's death is really damn good. And I got to put it in Traumatize the Generation because I think if you go to the gym, you think about this death. I think it's very effective, gory, and just a hell of a lot of fun. So up next is going to be Aaron in the good old Home Depot Lowe's death. Probably the worst place you could possibly be in a Final Destination movie, besides maybe like a knife store or a sword gallery or something. But yeah, she's in there. We're getting all the fun little fake outs with Ian and her, and you're not really sure what's going to happen. It seems like Wendy saved them, and then all of a sudden she slips, and it's like boom, 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 boom. Holy shit. What is it, like 12 nails from the nail gun go into her skull, like kind of quick, but also slow at the same time, and the shot kind of lingers. I just think Aaron's is an effective one for me. It really works. I think it's a lot of fun, and with the fake outs and all the anxiety of all of that. And I'm going to say the word fake out a lot, obviously, but I think it's pulled off really well in this type of a scene. You think people are going to die in a certain way, and then nope, they catch you off guard. It's an effective one. I think Aaron's, for me, needs to go in, you don't even want to fuck with that Mac Daddy. And it kind of seems like, she is alive for a little bit after it. She's kind of twitching a little bit. Her face is moving a little bit, even with 10 or 12 nails in her skull. Brutal one. So very effective one. Up next is going to be good old Perry at the McKinley Tricentennial at the end of the movie. A quick death, a character we don't get to know at all in the movie. They're trying to figure out, Wendy saves her sister, and they're like, oh, wait, guys, who was sitting next to you on the ride? Tell me right now, who was sitting? Oh, okay. And then the horse gets scared because of the fireworks and then just throws this post like it's a damn javelin straight through this poor girl, Perry. And it's kind of like, okay, well, I guess we solved that question. And then she slides down the pole, kind of similar to Jason in Friday the 13th, Part 4, sliding down the machete. Kind of a fun one. It's not one of the greatest ones in the franchise by any means, but yeah, still fun nonetheless and bloody as well. So for me, I think Perry's needs to go in decent dismount for those reasons like I just mentioned. So, all right, guys, up next is going to be good old Ian. Now, Ian is one of my favorite characters in this franchise. Very much reminds me of Eric in Final Destination Bloodlines. Eric's better, but Ian's great too. That pessimistic, sarcastic, funny guy in the movie. He just works so well in a movie like this. But Ian's, it's bloody. It's got some good fake outs. You think maybe Ian did cheat death. The fireworks fly right by him. He's like, holy shit, yes, I'm invincible. And then the thing falls on him. Yeah, he could have gotten out of the way. But kind of funny too, when his like half of his body's laying there, he's like flipping us off at the same time. That's very much in character for Ian. So Ian's, for me, needs to go in a decent dismount. Not in any particular order, but yeah, decent dismount on that one. So All right, up next is going to be kind of the very end. And I get this is kind of a premonition type of a scene at the metro, that whole thing on the subway, whatever. I'm still going to include it though. So here, we're going to first talk about Julie. So Julie in this one, so the whole scene basically happens because of these rats that are chewing on like a candy bar, which then sends the subway off the wrong track and all of that. In this scene though, I do absolutely hate the flashing lights, a trope in the horror genre we just need to kill. I get this movie's really old. All those flashing lights, just get rid of that trope. I absolutely hate that trope so much. But still, you know, an okay, decent little scene nonetheless. But yeah, Julie here just gets hit quickly by one of the train wheels. It takes her out in just like a brief second. Yeah, it's brutal. Yeah, it's bloody just for a quick second, but by no means one of the most memorable scenes in this movie or in this franchise at all. So Julie's, for me, you know, it's just quick and kind of mediocre. I'm going to put it in fake tan. Would I put it above Clears? Probably, but you know, I don't even know if you can jumble these around. Oh, you can. Cool. There we go. I know sometimes you can. Sometimes I have issues with that, but yeah, Julie's, I'll put it in fake tan. So obviously Kevin and Wendy both die in that scene as well. Kevin's is more brutal. Kevin he's like on the glass of the subway, and then eventually the glass breaks and he just gets like ground up on the wall in between the subway and the wall, and his blood's spraying all over the place. But again, quick, not very memorable for a important character in this movie, but still a brutal, bloody kill nonetheless. I'm going to put Kevin's in a decent dismount for me. I think it's just a little bit more effective than Julie's, and yeah, kind of works. So Wendy's up next, the very last death in the movie. She seems to survive this whole incident, premonition, whatever. All of them end up dying after this premonition regardless. That's why I'm including these kills as an actual death in this movie. But Wendy's, hers is all off screen. She seems to survive. She can't move though. Her leg is all beat up. We just see a little bit of blood on her leg. And then the next train comes right for her and wham, we cut to credits, but we don't see anything. Yeah, it's kind of a fun scene overall with everything going on with the subway and all of that. But you know, Wendy's, nonetheless, it's all off screen. It's very similar to Carter's at the end of the first movie. So Wendy's, I'm going to put it in Death Took a Day Off here. You know, I would put it above Carter's and all that. See, it's not even you bastard. But anyways, you get the point. So Wendy's is going to go there. Death Took the Day Off. All right, up next, we're moving on to the Final Destination, the greatest movie in this entire franchise, a cinematic masterpiece, Final Destination 3D. And we're going to talk about Nadia. Now, this is the one where it's, I guess, kind of related to the premonition, sort of, but sort of isn't, because the stuff that happens on the racetrack causes her death. I get it. But yeah, she gets taken out by the tire, like flies over the stadium and just wham, takes her out all of a sudden. It's a sudden death, plays into the whole 3D thing. Yeah, it looks a little bit janky. It's not the greatest death by any means, but it's bloody enough and it's kind of a little surprising enough that I would put Nadia's in decent dismount. All right, and up next is going to be good old Carter, the racist asshole in the movie that you knew was going to get it in some kind of a way. But yeah, I mean, this one has some funny moments at the same time. They're playing the music, "Why Can't We Be Friends?" as he's heading over to Bubba's house to mess with him and, you know, do some shit that he does because he is a piece of shit. So yeah, Carter, not one of the greatest deaths in the franchise. He's got his like tow truck going on there. He eventually gets caught in the hook. It's creating some sparks and some of the gasoline had spilled, which causes a big old fire. The fire leads back into the truck and explodes. And some of the pieces like start flying at Bubba. But, you know, I call Bubba obviously because of Forrest Gump. But, you know, it's an okay kill for me. I'm going to put Carter's in it because it's kind of funny at the same time. And one of the best parts of Carter's death, of course, is the head. It flies and falls right in front of Bubba. And it's got like this shocking face to it. And it's on fire, which is pretty damn hilarious. Not a bad one. It's going to go for me into decent dismount for Carter's death. So up next is Samantha. Samantha, she is at the hair salon. There's all kinds of fake outs going on, the fan and the other ways that you could die in a hair salon. There's a lot of ways that you could die. But at the end of this one, it plays off of the whole lawnmower thing. She eventually gets a rock right into the eye. You know, her kids are kind of being like little shits. That's something that I can definitely relate to because my kids are little shits at times too. But she's like, "I've got my eye on you." She says that to her kids and you can clearly see something's coming. She turns around right as she's leaving the door, and wham, a rock flies through the lawnmower right at her and goes right into her face, right into her eye. And the guy who's mowing the lawn is just like, even afterwards, is just like smoking a cig, has no idea what just happened. And I do think it was a bit of a missed opportunity, though. I think having her death be something salon, hairstylist, haircut related, I think would have been cool for this franchise. But on the other hand, it also plays into the whole lawnmower thing. I use lawnmowers all the damn time, so it's going to make me think about that immediately. So yeah, because of that, I actually think a Samantha's is pretty relatable. I think it's pretty effective. It's got some good fake outs, and it's also gory as hell. Also, so Samantha's for me is going to go, and you don't even want to fuck with that Mac Daddy. Definitely on the back half of that category for me. It's not as good as Tim's. It's not as good as probably Billy's or Nora's, but still effective. All right, up next is going to be good old Andy. He works at a repair shop. He's a mechanic. It seems like this kill, I feel like I would guess a lot of people really like this death. For me, the CGI looks horrible. There's a fake out. Seems like he lives. The car stops, doesn't run him over, pushes him into the fence. And then boom, all of a sudden this like oxygen tank thing, nitrous, whatever the hell, tank flies, hits him, pushes him into the fence so bad that it basically turns into a cheese grater. Yeah, it's gory. Kind of cool how you can see through the body. You see his coworkers running to see what the hell happened. That's okay, I guess. But I feel like this kill, Andy's, it's just not that great to me. I think to me, decent dismount. In the back half of decent dismount for me personally. So, all right, up next, actually one of my favorite deaths in The Final Destination, which does have some fun deaths in that movie, despite it being a god-awful movie for the most part, but it's going to be Hunt's death. He's kind of the jock Abercrombie model dude who, gets the girl. He's hooking up with the chick right before the pool moment. His lucky coin thing falls into the water and then goes into the drain. And he's like, I'm going to go and see if I can get it. So not only does this swimming pool kill play off of public swimming pools and swimming pools just in general. So when I swim in a swimming pool, if I've got, I'm going down there, I see the drain, I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to immediately think about this guy in this moment. But I think it's also funny, just his reaction and how his body just gets like sucked in. He's basically being turned inside out. His innards are being sucked out of his body through this drain in the swimming pool, which is pretty damn hilarious. I like some of these shots underneath the water, how there's people in the water. He's surrounded by a bunch of people who could potentially help him, but nobody knows what's going on, really. It's kind of like when you're a kid and you play like fake dead in the swimming pool to see if anybody reacts to it. And of course, nobody does. Nobody really sees you because everybody's just doing their own thing. And they're like, yeah, oh, it's Johnny again, up to some shit, pranking people. But anyways, I think Hunt's is a lot of fun. So Hunt's for me is actually going to go and traumatize a generation. I mean, it's not up there with Ashley and Ashlyn or anything like that. But I think it's very effective and well done. All right, Jonathan is up next, the cowboy from that movie, the guy who kind of changed. He's the twist in the movie because they think the order of death is coming in a particular way, and then they find out because of the news that Jonathan actually survived the events in the opening to the movie. So the order was all jumbled around. His death, I mean, my wife's a physical therapist, so I laugh about that aspect of it. He's the physical therapy tub. Physical therapy tubs, like I mentioned before, getting a lot of love in the horror genre. Halloween 2, that iconic scene right there. And then we get this scene, but it's just not that great. The physical therapy tub falls on top of him. It's not all that gory. It's not all that shocking. It's not all that tense. Honestly, to me, I think it's pretty mediocre. I'm going to put Jonathan's death in fake tan. All right, up next is going to be Bubba, or George, they call him in The Final Destination, but his death, definitely a mediocre one, has a lot of similarities, obviously, to Terry's just being brutally ran over all of a sudden, but it's not even close to the level of Terry's. I don't know. I just feel like it's just one of those shots. You guys know what I'm talking about? Where when it kind of pans out, it goes from this like handheld type of a shot on the two characters as they're walking. Then all of a sudden we pan out and it's kind of this static, more of a tripod shot. So you can just see that something is obviously coming. And yes, it does. He gets ran over by the ambulance. Not shocking, not all that memorable, not all that brutal. I mean, it would suck, obviously, to be ran over like that, but still, I just think very mediocre. We've seen it before in the franchise, and we've seen it done way better in the franchise to me. So George for me. So I'm going to put it in fake tan for me. Not a great one by any means. All right, up next is going to be the very end of the movie. Like I said earlier, Final Destination loves to send us off with, in some cases, just a little something to make us laugh and to make us say, damn, that just happened at the end of the movie before cutting to credits. But to me, this final ending to The Final Destination is the worst in the franchise. It's not shocking. It's not surprising. It's not even really gory. Yeah, I guess the X-ray stuff is okay. I mean, they did that in the opening credits, which was kind of cool, going back to some of the kills in the past in the franchise and showing them from like an X-ray perspective. But in this one, Janet is one of the same, is just like Lori, is just like Nick. They just get ran over by the semi-truck as they're just kind of chilling in a cafe. These are very mediocre. I'm going to lump all of these together, even though they kind of die in sort of different ways. One of them's neck snaps around a little bit, but it's not memorable at all. So yeah, I'm actually going to do all y'all are going in fake tan because very mediocre. There you go. Fake tan for all three of you to round out the worst movie in the franchise. If you want to see how I rank the movies, I do have a video on my channel that I just posted recently. We're moving right along from very non-memorable deaths to one of the most memorable deaths in this entire franchise, Candace, the gymnast. My wife was a gymnast growing up. I've been to a lot of gymnastics meets over my life. But regardless, this death, great fake outs, great anxiety as she's on the beam and that screw is there. You're like, okay, this is probably how it's going to happen, right? Nope, not so fast. There's water kind of seeping towards her feet right next to the cord there. Looks like she's going to potentially be electrocuted. Nope, that doesn't happen either. And then when she gets on the bars, that is when it eventually happens, and it is an absolutely crazy death. I think either her dismount was because of the chalk being thrown all over, or she was actually planning on doing her dismount and obviously didn't land it in the way that she was supposed to, and does her little thing and gets absolutely just bent in half. Her spine is sticking out. The bone in her leg is sticking out. But more importantly, one of the most memorable things about this death is we don't just cut away like we do in some of the deaths in this franchise. This one lingers right on her as we're just kind of slowly zooming in. And her finger, if I remember correctly, her finger is twitching as well. An absolutely crazy death. And like I said, one of the most memorable in this entire franchise. So Candace, I'm sorry. You did it for us. You died for us so we could enjoy your death. But you're going to go up in traumatized a generation in no particular order necessarily. I mean, it's better than Hunt's and some of the other ones, better than Frankie's, but still, I'm not going to mess with that too much. But just what a crazy one. All right, up next is going to be Isaac, the chubby womanizer guy who's just kind of weird and creepy in this movie. Of course, his death, he goes to the massage parlor. He stole the coupon from one of the people that died in the premonition. And he's like, all right, this has got to be one of those places that gives the happy ending. So I'm definitely going to go for that. And he tries and gets an old grandma to take care of him. And she does take care of him, but she's not responsible for the death per se. Gets acupuncture, that whole thing. The thing catches on fire. He's kind of shitting his pants, lands on the ground. And then the Buddha he was talking about earlier falls down and crushes his head like a watermelon. I think how the whole scene goes down, it's kind of funny, it's kind of memorable, it's kind of a holy shit moment. It is definitely gory as well. And overall, it's a pretty fun one. But I will say Isaac's for me is going to go in. You don't want to even fuck with that Mac Daddy on kind of the back half of that one, similar to Samantha's. So still a fun one, but I don't think it really belongs probably in a decent dismount for me. But moving right along to another one of the most memorable deaths in this entire franchise. It's a little bit more niche, kind of like the gymnastics death, definitely a little bit more niche than some of the other ones like lawnmowers and other things like that. But nonetheless, a very, very memorable one, which of course is the LASIK eye surgery Olivia death scene. Another one of those things where you feel like you have lost control. She's strapped in, her eye is just being destroyed by this laser. Very squeamish. I'm sure turned a lot of people, probably hurt the LASIK industry a decent amount. A lot of people turned off of getting surgery, probably because of this movie, as stupid as that sounds. But, it probably did happen. But still, yeah, Olivia's, what a crazy death. And then she falls out of the window onto the car. I think it's all pulled off really well. I think it's a brilliant idea for a death scene in Final Destination. But First needs to go and traumatize a generation. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the most memorable in the franchise, like I said, not in any particular order. But all right, moving right along to Roy, the asshole Roy, who basically just hates his life, hates his boss, hates everything, ends up getting pushed. His boss, Nathan, tries to push him out of the way, which accidentally ends up getting Roy killed in that moment, which also makes him take Roy's life. Little does he know, though, Roy, is not going to be living too long, regardless if he dies in this scene or not. But I think it's pulled off pretty well. I think it's pretty funny with the whole fake out, how it looks like he probably survived. Like, oh, there's a spike underneath him. Cool. He held on to this wire. He's good. Nope. The blood just starts dripping onto the spike, and you're like, oh, damn. And then it pans up where we cut to his face, and it's right in his chin. And not only just that, I like it when these deaths kind of linger like that, and then they give us just a little something extra to make you laugh. I'm sure a lot of people laughed in the theater for this one, when it just eventually spiked through his skull as well. It's a pretty fun one. Not one of the best in the franchise, but still, I'm going to put this one in actually Mac Daddy, because I think it is pretty fun, like I said. So, all right, up next is going to be Dennis. Good old Dennis. Just moments later, Dennis is like, oh, what's going on down here, because I'm a boss who probably doesn't do shit anyways, but I'm going to pretend like I am actually doing some manager stuff. So he comes down to see what's going on, to see what happened to Roy, and then they're kind of similar to one of the deaths earlier in the franchise where they're like, in Final Destination 3 at the end, where they're like, okay, who's next? Wait, guys, we got to think about this. Who's next? And then all of a sudden, bam, Dennis gets one of the wrenches just thrown right into his face so hard that it lodges itself into his head, which that actual part is off screen. We do see the aftermath though, which looks practical to me, surprising for this franchise, but looks good. Looks nice and bloody and juicy and how we like it. And it looks like it was pulled off pretty well. Decently shocking scene, a decent kill, not great. Definitely one of those annoying characters that we wanted to see get a pretty decent death sequence. This one's a bit of a letdown, but still fun. Nonetheless, Dennis for me though, it's going to go in decent dismount. Up next is going to be Peter. Well, actually, before Peter, the cop died, who's not on this list. So sorry about that, but it doesn't really matter because it's one of the most forgettable deaths in this entire franchise. It's probably why it's not even on this list. The cop who shows up to the restaurant because he heard shots fired, he was nearby, basically following these guys because of everything suspicious happening. They're having the little scuffle in there. One of them's trying to kill the girlfriend because he wants to take her life. Doesn't feel like she deserves to live. He goes in there and then ends up getting shot in the back. Very forgettable. That one obviously would be in Death Took the Day Off. It's not off screen, but it's not a Final Destination memorable death by any means. But anyways, right after that though, moments later is Peter. Like I said, he's the guy who has just completely lost it. His girlfriend got brutally massacred at, gymnastics practice. So he's like, you know what? I'm not dying. I'm taking her life. Not a good plan by any means, because at the very least, he's probably going to rot in a jail cell somewhere if he doesn't get put to death, but ends up getting skewered by like the meat skewer cooker thing that we see earlier in the movie with the little fake out. But yeah, ends up getting that just jabbed through him. Not a memorable death, but it's not off screen. It's a little bit gory. It's a little bit sudden. Man, Death Took a Day Off, fake tan. Where would I put it? I'd probably put this one in fake tan because we get a little something there. Definitely on the back half of even fake tan, which is not a great thing by any means, obviously. So up next is going to be Molly. And yeah, in Final Destination 5, we get probably the biggest twist of this entire franchise when we find out that this entire movie is a prequel, which they hide pretty well in this movie. So she happens to be one of the people that dies on Flight 180. So we get that whole POV of what actually happens in Flight 180, because if you remember originally, we don't really get to see all of that. We kind of just cut to Alex and the other characters in the airport, and we see the explosion through the window up in the air. But yeah, Molly, sucks for you, Molly, man. She literally gets sucked out of the plane, bam, slides out of the plane, and then hits one of the wings and gets chopped in half. Very quick, pretty memorable though. Not one of the best in the franchise or anything like that, but it's a pretty decent one. I'm going to put in a decent dismount because it does give us a little something there that I do think is fun. However, Sam, her boyfriend, after, thank God, they decided to end the whole, are we going to Paris thing? Are we going to break up? What's going? All of that annoying stuff in Final Destination 5. We get the end of that, obviously. And Sam gets the good old same treatment that Alex got in The Premonition, and the same old treatment we get to see in a moment in Terminator 2 as well. The old T2 treatment. This guy just gets burnt alive. And yeah, it's crispy. Looks very painful, obviously. He doesn't probably die too quickly, but maybe somewhat quickly. But still, it's not a memorable one. So for me, Sam is going to go in fake tan, which now that I think about it, he's kind of getting a real tan because this dude is going to be extra burnt and extra crispy. All right, moving right along to the final death in Final Destination 5, which is going to be Nathan. He plays the boss of like the factory for the paper company. So his death, we all think he cheated death because he took places. Tony Todd tells him if you kill somebody, they will take your place in death and you'll take their place in life. So the piece of shit guy that he kills by accident earlier in the movie, by happenstance, he takes his life. Unfortunately for Nathan, that guy had an enlarged blood vessel in his brain and was going to die any minute now. And he finds that out right here in this celebration of life thing they have for this guy. He's cracking a beer, talking to one of his coworkers who tells him the news. And he's just like, holy shit, uh-oh, that's not good. And a piece of the landing gear from Flight 180, the wheel, I think it is, falls on top of him and kills him to end the movie. And I think it's his arm that flies right at the screen, giving a little 3D moment there. But yeah, a really funny moment. Not, the greatest sequence ever, but still funny, memorable, quick, shocking, and just overall a good time. So for me, I'm going to put Nathan in a decent dismount because, yeah, like I said, I think it's pretty fun. And like I said, my face is going to cut off some of these, but just deal with it. All right, moving right along actually to Final Destination Bloodlines, the newest movie in the franchise, which did give us some really fun death scenes. Some of the best in the franchise. They are right up there. Some really great ones. So first, we are going to talk about Iris, the grandma, the woman we see in the opening premonition. Her death, there's some fun moments in there, but also at the same time, and I get she has terminal cancer, it sounds like, and only has a few months to live. But still, she kind of screws over the rest of the family. She just sacrifices herself. So she's been in this cabin, this fortress for like 20 years, she says. And then because she desperately wants to give her Bible of how to defeat death and avoid death to Stephanie, she's like, all right, I got to step outside. I'm just going to show her. I'm going to sacrifice myself to prove to her what is going on here. And it's kind of like, well, maybe you could have tried to convince her more and more and more after this. Maybe use your phone. I guess you maybe have a phone or something. So that whole part is kind of a little bit weird because now that she's dead, that probably means that some other people in the family are now going to die because defeating death is pretty hard, especially for people in the family who are novices at defeating death. So, she's got that angle of it. She kind of kills some of them by accident, sort of, but still, she gets like the whole wind thing on top of, the thing that kind of spins in storms on the roof, the pokey thing that falls into her face, kind of goes through her face, and the blood sprays all over Stephanie. Yeah, a bloody kill, but by no means a great one or anything like that. So, yeah, sorry, Iris. I know you're an important character, and you did a damn good job of avoiding death, but in the end, you ended up getting killed. Like the rest of us will end up dying at some point. Yours just happened to be kind of lame, so fake tan for you, Iris. All right, moving right along to one of the nicest characters in this entire franchise. One of the most maybe the most likable character in this entire franchise. My dumbass, as I was watching Final Destination Bloodlines for the first time, I was like, man, maybe this guy is going to make it out of it. I kind of fell for it. I should have known they were building this guy to be the nicest person on the planet just so they could absolutely massacre this poor bastard. He's offering the key to his sister she's going through hard times, to live with her. It just keeps going on and on. It's like, this guy is so nice. But Howard ends up getting killed by the lawnmower. Ass down, face up, which is not a place you want to be with a lawnmower hovering over your face. But great fake outs in the scene. Thank goodness I did not watch any of the long trailers for Final Destination because they completely spoil this death in this movie, which is one of the best in the movies. A great one in the franchise just in general. Plays on the whole like family barbecue, get together in your backyard. That could go wrong. The little glass shard falls into the ice box, which also helps this chain of events. They knock over the beer, knocks the rake into the lawnmower. The lawnmower goes. We got the trampoline as a part of the fake out happening. Yeah, I just think it's a fun scene. They pulled it off really, really well. And it ends, like I said, with his face getting chopped up in that lawnmower. And then I love the reactions from everybody too. That's great. Adds a little something extra to this one. So Howard's is very solid. I could put this in Traumatize the Generation. Oof, a tough one. I think I'm going to put Howard's into You Don't Want to Fuck With That Mac Daddy. Yeah, I think it's going to go in Mac Daddy for me. It could go towards the front of that category. It's a very good one. Up next, his daughter, thanks to Iris. It's just going on down the old bloodline. People are starting to die left and right. And Julia, they all thought that Eric was going to get it. You know, we have that whole scene like they showed us in the first teaser trailer at the tattoo parlor, a place where you could pull off a very memorable Final Destination death. But like I said in my teaser trailer, you all shit on me because I shit on that trailer because I thought it was kind of a letdown. And I told you guys, Eric didn't even die. Everybody in the comments was saying, it's going to be crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. It's going to be some crazy, brutal death. I was kind of right. Was I a little bit harsh on that teaser trailer? Yeah, probably. But, you know, jokes aside. So Julia gets it. And to me, this is maybe the best death in this entire movie. This death not only kind of reminds me of that garbage truck moment in Child's Play 3, but yeah, the fake outs with this death scene are absolutely incredible. Some of the best fake outs in this entire franchise. The sleight of hand going on here. Eric being his funny self. Everybody thinks that Eric's going to get it. Stephanie is too. Stephanie is getting these feelings of what's going to happen to Eric, but little does she know exactly what she thought was going to happen to Eric happens in the background, blurry, to Eric's sister. But Eric's kind of like, she's like, you better stay away from that garbage truck. That thing looks like it's going to kill you. And he's like, oh, this garbage truck. He's, you know, he's licking it. He's kind of spanking the wheel a little bit, doing that whole thing. And then, like I said, right behind him, Julia gets thrown into the garbage truck. They can't save him. The guy in the truck is listening to some Kelly Clarkson. He's swiping on this knockoff Tinder dating app. He can't even hear him. And Stephanie, she gets some of Julia out of the garbage truck. Just so happens, unfortunately for Julia, it is her severed arm that she pulls out, but we just slowly see her head crunch right in front of us. And yeah, very CGI. It's all in broad daylight, so we can see every little wart and flaw with the CGI. But I still think it looks pretty good. But more of the sleight of hand fake out stuff I think is incredible. Plays on garbage trucks. The garbage truck came to my house today, all right? You know, so it plays on that. Made me think of this movie, definitely. And yeah, Julia's, I gotta put it in Traumatized a Generation. Okay, up next is going to be Eric, another one of those right up there with Julia's death. Eric's might be the best death scene in this entire movie. What a great, memorable death scene. So they're in the hospital and they're at that point. Eric is they're coming up with an idea of how they can kill Bobby because Bobby's technically the next one in line. So they're like, okay, you have a terrible nut allergy, which will just close up your throat and make you suffocate. So let's use that against you. We're already at a hospital. So let's do that. Let's have you flatline like Tony Todd told them. Let's defeat death and let's stop this whole thing. So while they're in the process of doing that, the MRI machine gets turned up to 1,000,000, turns into this giant magnet. And Eric, you know, he works at a tattoo shop, has a lot of piercings and all that too. His piercings in his ears start flying out. His nipple rings start flying out. His Prince Albert as well, which, damn, starts getting pulled by the MRI machine. But of course, Eric is not on death's list. But unfortunately for Eric, like Tony Todd warned them, when you fuck with death, bad things are going to happen. And one of the wheelchairs behind him gets sucked towards the MRI machine, pulling him, catching him right in the way, and kind of reminds me of that kid being pulled into the drain in the It miniseries or the It remakes, reboots. You know, remember that scene where he kind of gets pulled in there, folded in half? Kind of reminds me of that. But I mean, he's got that tattoo on his stomach there with this, I think it's a skull, and the pieces of the wheelchair kind of getting pulled through that. It's bloody. It is very memorable, and it's a lingering scene too. He's being folded in half. Absolutely brutal. Like I said, one of the best death scenes in this entire movie, which has some great ones. And yeah, so for me, Eric's has got to go into Traumatize a Generation because I will never, ever, not that I've ever been in an MRI machine. Hopefully I never have to be because that would be claustrophobic as hell. But, you know, next time I'm in a hospital or something like that, I'm going to think about this death. Definitely. So yeah, Eric's right up there at the top. All right, up next is going to be Bobby, which just moments later, we were expecting Bobby to be the one get it in this scene. And yeah, he eventually does, you know, when they're messing with the vending machine. That's got some fake outs there a little bit, but he gets one of the coils in the vending machine because of the magnet, gets shot straight at him because, like, you know, like I said, he's the next one in line, and goes right into his forehead and then just kind of keeps spinning a little bit like a little drill, which, you know, I've never seen anybody get a coil in their forehead, but I would imagine that's what it would probably look like. And it's very gory and it's pretty good. I'd put Bobby's in a decent dismount. This decent dismount's getting pretty long. Up next is going to be the estranged mom who's been away, you know, ever since these kids, Stephanie and her brother, were young, who's back in the picture because the shit is going down and Iris died, which is going to be Darlene. So yeah, in this scene, Darlene and Stephanie and her brother Charlie, they head off to Grandma's fortress because Darlene is going to live there and live out her years. That way, you know, Stephanie and Charlie can live out their years. I guess that's their plan. Sorry, Darlene. But in the midst of all of it, there's an explosion. Darlene, part of her face gets burned. And then eventually this pole with, I think it has the security camera on him. It's kind of like an electrical pole kind of a thing. Falls on her. Splat. She's dead. It's quick. It's not memorable. I think that whole kind of ending scene is pretty average just in general. And her death, Darlene's not a great one by any means. I got to put that one in fake tan for me. Yeah. So our final two deaths in the entire Final Destination franchise happen at the very end of the movie. It's a cool little fake out. It's a fun little twist, not super like mind blowing or anything like that. But at the end of the movie, they thought they cheated death because Stephanie, they thought, at least Charlie and her thought that she flatlined because she drowned and then Charlie brought her back, resuscitated her. But at the end of the movie, they're all getting ready for prom and there's a dad there who's a doctor. And he's like, well, not technically, but it's still kind of cool. And they're like, what do you mean? Oh, she wasn't technically dead. And they're both like, oh, shit. And as that, you know, there's a train moment building and building, and this train goes off the tracks because of the coin from that grandma, flies through the trees. Stephanie and Charlie are running like Mission Impossible, trying to get away from this thing. And the train stops and they think they're safe just for a quick moment. And with a little homage to that Final Destination second movie car pileup scene with the logging truck, the logs fly right over the top of this train and wham, bam, take out both of them in just an instant. I think it's a cool scene. I think it's pulled off well. I think it looks good. It's a nice homage to that, you know, very famous logging truck scene. Obviously, one of the most memorable things in this entire franchise, which traumatized a generation. But these deaths definitely did not traumatize a generation. I wouldn't say at all. But still, you know, decent. So that's where they're going to go. Decent dismount, and I know they're cut off, but deal with it. But anyways, there you go, everybody. That is how I rank every death in the Final Destination franchise. If I missed any of the deaths in the franchise, I don't think I did, but if I did miss any of them, I apologize in advance. Sorry about that. But like I said, I don't think I did. But first of all, I do want to thank my Patreon supporters and my channel members. Thanks so much, guys. Really, really does mean a lot. So thank you so much for the continued support. And again, guys, comment down below what your favorite deaths are in the Final Destination franchise. I read every single comment, so would love to hear what you guys think. If you want some more videos from me right now, go ahead and check out one of these videos next to me. I have a ton of Final Destination content on the channel. If you don't want to miss future videos on the channel, best way to do that is to make sure you subscribe and also turn on those notifications as well. All of my social media links will be down below in the description. If you want to go and check those out. This run of videos I've been doing after Final Destination Bloodlines has been a lot of fun because I do enjoy this franchise. So thanks so much for watching. I will probably have another video ranking all of the premonitions as well. So be on the lookout for that, everybody. But again, thanks so much for watching. Really do appreciate it. My name is Matt, and I will talk to you in the next one.